I wanted to make a quick video explaining something that I have been stuck on for a little bit and finally got figured out, and hopefully this can help somebody else out too. So I'm a worship leader at a church, and we usually are using Ableton to run tracks, and usually our keys player will do that, and we use the Akai MPK Mini as the controller for that. That way it makes it easy for them to pick whichever song, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then play and stop. However, sometimes if we have a new keys player or if somebody just isn't comfortable with doing that and we want them to just focus on playing keys, we will have one of our worship leaders use the Looptimus Plus from Loop Community. The problem with this is I don't really want to reassign what MIDI notes are coming from the Akai, and you can't change MIDI notes on the Looptimus. So for example, the stop is always the stop. Button 1A always sends the same MIDI note, but there are times that I don't want to have to rebuild my template, or in a situation where maybe a keys player all of a sudden gets sick, I don't want to have to go in to rebuild my Ableton template for depending on which controller we have. I just want to be able to map. I want it to stay mapped no matter what. So what I figured out to do is pick one of your controllers as the main controller. So we're going to say the Looptimus is the main one. And so I'm going to hit MIDI and I'm going to go in. This is my normal template. So I'm just going to go in and assign. I always keep these 4 or 5 song markers just at the beginning so that whenever I start building a set, I don't have to go in and reassign everything. So we're going to say I want song 1 to be this button because I want 1A to be my start. So song 1 is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, and then of course my master stop I want to be mapped to my Ableton stop. And then play is going to be this first one. So now if I get out of my MIDI mapping mode, I can see within Ableton this all works. However, and then my stop, that stops everything and goes back to the beginning. However, my problem is my Akai does not follow this, but I also know that it is sending different messages. So what I like to do is create what I call a remapping track. So I'm going to say file, or we're going to create a new insert a MIDI track or Shift Command T. I'm going to rename this MPK remap. Now what's important is I don't want to remap every input that comes in. So we're going to say I only want my input from my MPK Mini, and we are going to say all channels because my key bed is on channel 1 and all my pads are on channel 10. So we're going to say all channels. I want to monitor in. I want it to always be watching for this, but again, only from the MPK Mini. And then my output, we're going to send to the IAC driver, which in my Ableton settings, if we go to MIDI, my IAC driver is set for track and remote on the input and the output. And then I have my MPK Mini on my input and my output, as well as my Looptimus track and remote on the inputs. Sorry, the MPK Mini on my inputs. Everything is set to track and remote. So the next thing I'm going to do is in our MIDI effects, I want to create a new effect rack. And then I always say I want a MIDI monitor at the front. And I want another MIDI monitor at the end. And then all I do is change my pitch. So if I go here, I can see my effect rack. So I'm going to rename, instead of pitch, this is going to be, we're going to rename it 1, or we can say song 1. Okay. So now, if I hit a button on my Akai, I can see 1 is before my MIDI effect rack is C1 and after, or is C2 and after is also C2. Now, because we've already mapped this locator to the loop to miss, I actually need it to be C# -2, or not, I'm sorry, that's start. 1, we need to be D -2. So what I'm going to do is come in and say, I know that when I hit this C, it comes in on C2, and then I'm going to take this pitch effect, and I'm going to take it to, I'm not even going to do math. I'm just going to start guessing. Okay, so now it's G0, so we need to keep going. A -1, but again, we're going to D -2, D# -1, F -2, so that should be E, D#, D. So now, when I hit D -2, you should also see, hopefully, that if I click here to get off of this locator, now when I hit this first note, it jumps me to my first locator, because when I hit C- or C2, it is now repitching it down to D -2 and then sending that back into Ableton via the IAC driver. And so now Ableton sees the same note from my loop to miss and from my Akai to trigger that first locator. So then we just repeat this. The other thing I will do is make sure that this pitch effect only functions when I hit this C2. So I'm just going to take this and go to C2, and then on the other end, same thing, C2. So now any other note that I press isn't going to try to repitch it down exactly here. So then I'm going to duplicate this and say this is now song 2. And song 2, so I've got D2 coming in from the Akai, but again, locator 2 needs to be D# -2. So we're also going to take this and say when we hit D2, now it's hitting our pitch effect and is at E -2, so we just need to bring it down one more. So we can just click on it and say -47. Now we're at D# -2, and hopefully you saw in our timeline that we also jumped to locator 2. So now, on either controller, on the loop to miss, I can say song 1 and it jumps to song 1, or song 2 jumps to song 2. On my Akai, I can say song 1 and it jumps to song 1, or I can say song 2, jumps to song 2. Then you just repeat this for as many songs as you have. So I've got 5, let's say. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. Great. Song 3. And we don't even have to push on the Akai. We know it's E, F, and G. And then we'll rename all these to keep everything straight. Whoops. Rename them. Song 4 and song 5. And again, we say 3 is currently going to F -2, but 3 needs to be E -2, so we just bring it down one more to -48. And now 3 jumps us to locator 3. 4 is at F# -2, but again, needs to be F -2, so we'll just take it down 1 to -48. Oop. Wrong way. Close. So it's at F#2, and it needs to be at F2. I was right the first time. F -2, great. And then you can just check your work, 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as 1, 2, 3, 4, and lastly 5. 5 is at G sharp -2, but it needs to be at F sharp -2. So we need to come down 2 more steps to -49. And now 5 is F sharp -2. Again, you can check everything and it's great. Then we can repeat the process for the play and start. So if we duplicate this, we can rename this play. And then we can also do stop, rename stop, and stop is G8. However, currently it is G7, so we just need to take it up a full octave. And again, this needs to start at G7 and then go up 12. So now that is now our stop button as well as here. And then for play, and our play is already at C sharp -2 because coincidentally this and this already send the same button, but the same process applies. So, and then you can just collapse that, and that can just stay in your template. And when the Akai is not plugged in, because it is watching from the MPK Mini input, when that isn't plugged in, if I unplug this, it will disable it. It can still stay in your session. It doesn't take up hardly any resources. And then this can be your main MIDI controller, and then say your keys player comes in, you just plug this in, and you are ready to go.